He was barely strong enough to carry his own weight, yet someone tied a thick rope around his small body and forced him to drag a cart loaded with stones. His paws bled, his breath grew shallow, but no one seemed to care. Until one day, a stranger stopped everything. What followed was a moment so powerful, so deeply human, it would restore your faith in compassion. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring stories like this to you. On the outskirts of a quiet rural town in Arkansas, dust clung to the air like a heavy memory. The roads were cracked, and the fields ran dry under the relentless summer sun. Along one of those back roads, a sight too cruel to ignore creaked slowly down the gravel. A small wooden cart packed with uneven stones, wobbling behind it a tiny, cream-colored French bulldog. His name was Milo, and he wasn't just pulling the cart, he was tied to it. His harness was nothing more than frayed rope knotted harshly across his chest, digging into his soft skin with each step. His paws were raw. Each pull forward scraped his body further against the dirt and gravel, and still he pushed on. Not because he understood why, but because he had no choice. Milo had been dumped at a construction site as a pup, and somehow ended up in the hands of a man named Earl. Earl was a hardened soul who saw animals as tools, not lives. And to him, Milo was just a cheap way to move things short distances. The cart was originally for his old wheelbarrow. But when that broke, he didn't fix it, he just looked at Milo. The first time the rope went around Milo's chest, he didn't fight. Maybe he trusted, maybe he hoped, but days turned into weeks. And hope, that vanished with every cracked pad, every kick of dust in his eyes. Still, Milo didn't break. His body grew weaker, but his spirit somehow didn't disappear. Even as Earl cursed and yanked the rope tighter, Milo's eyes held a quiet glow, like he knew something better had to exist beyond these dusty fields. Locals whispered about the dog. They'd seen him in the early morning hours, dragging that cart past the edge of town. Some turned away. Others snapped pictures. No one intervened, until the morning that would change everything. It was just after dawn when Claire Bennett, a traveling veterinary technician, took a detour down the gravel road after missing her turn. Her coffee sat untouched in the cup holder as her eyes caught the movement in the distance. A strange silhouette in the rising light. Slowing her car, she leaned forward. It looked like a dog, but something wasn't right. The weight, the way he walked, the wobble of the cart. Then she saw the rope. Claire slammed the brakes. The car door flew open, and as she stepped out onto the gravel, she whispered, "Oh my God!" Milo looked up at her. His legs trembled. His mouth was dry, and still his tail wagged once, slowly. What would Claire do? Could she stop this? And would Earl even let her near him? This wasn't just a rescue waiting to happen. It was a life hanging by a thread. Claire's boots crunched over the gravel as she cautiously approached. She kept her hands low and her voice soft, heart pounding at the sight in front of her. Milo had stopped walking, but his body still trembled from exhaustion. His head tilted slightly, eyes wide and unsure, yet without an ounce of aggression. "Hey there, little guy," Claire murmured, kneeling just a few feet away. "It's okay. I see you." The rope was tight around his chest, matted into fur damp with sweat and dirt. The cart behind him shifted slightly, and Milo flinched. Not from pain, but instinct. Claire could feel the sting of tears gathering in her throat. From behind her, the loud crunch of boots against gravel broke the moment. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" A deep, raspy voice shouted. She turned to see a man in his 60s with sun-worn skin and a faded flannel shirt, approaching with fire in his eyes. "Earl, I was about to ask you the same," Claire replied, standing slowly. "This dog's in pain. You can't use him like this." Earl scoffed. "He's just a mutt. Found him running around the worksite. Better I put him to work than let him die in a ditch." Claire clenched her jaw. "You tied a French bulldog, to a cart full of stone. He's not a workhorse. He's barely surviving." Earl stepped forward, his expression hard. "Not your business, lady." But Claire didn't back down. "Actually, it is. I'm a licensed vet tech. And what you're doing here? This is abuse. There was a moment of silence. Thick, heavy, dangerous. Then Earl grunted and spat on the ground. Fine. Take him. He's useless anyway. With a final glare, he turned and stomped off toward his shed, leaving Claire and Milo alone in the morning haze. Claire immediately moved to Milo's side, pulling out a pocket knife from her bag. She carefully sliced through the rope while whispering softly to him. Milo didn't resist. He didn't bark. He simply leaned into her touch like he had waited his entire life for someone to be kind. Once free, he collapsed into her lap, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Claire pulled out a small bowl and poured water from her bottle. He drank eagerly, licking her hand in gratitude afterward. She wrapped him gently in a blanket from her car and lifted him into the back seat. As she shut the door and slid into the driver's seat, she glanced back at him in the mirror. "You're coming with me now, Milo," she whispered. "We're going to fix this." But what Claire didn't know yet was that saving Milo would be more than a rescue. It would lead her down a road of healing she didn't even know she needed. Would Milo recover? And what shadows from Claire's past would come to the surface as she cared for him? The journey had only just begun. The veterinary clinic in the nearby town of Maple Ridge was a small but welcoming place, nestled between a florist and an old bakery that smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread. Claire parked out front and carried Milo gently through the doors, wrapped snugly in the blanket like a fragile secret. Inside, the receptionist's eyes widened. "Claire, what happened?" Claire didn't answer right away. She simply said, "Get me a scale, saline, and something to soothe cracked paw pads. We've got a long recovery ahead." Milo was placed gently on the exam table. He didn't bark. He didn't whimper. He just looked around the room with tired, blinking eyes. His body was silent, but his expression said everything. Claire had seen dogs in all kinds of conditions over the years, from abandoned strays to injured working animals, but there was something different about Milo. His eyes weren't empty. They were heavy, like he'd carried far more than his tiny frame ever should have. She examined him carefully. Open abrasions on his chest, raw skin around the legs, a minor sprain in one paw, and his body weight, far below average for a French bulldog his size. "You poor thing," she whispered as she cleaned his wounds with the gentleness of someone who had known pain herself. "What kind of world puts a dog like you through this?" He flinched a little when the alcohol stung, but instead of pulling away, he looked up at her. His eyes locked on hers with a trust that felt almost too much to bear. For the next hour, Milo remained calm as Claire bathed him, treated his injuries, and fed him warm broth with a syringe. Every so often, he would lift his paw slowly to rest it on her hand. It wasn't begging. It was connection. Thank you. A plea to not be forgotten. That night, Claire didn't leave him at the clinic. She brought him home. Her house was quiet. A small place at the edge of the woods, filled with old books, worn blankets, and one empty dog bed that hadn't been touched since her golden retriever, Jasper, passed 2 years ago. Claire had sworn she wouldn't adopt again. The grief had been too much. She'd buried her best friend, and with him a part of herself. But as she watched Milo explore the living room slowly, carefully, tail flicking with uncertainty, she felt something stir. He paused at Jasper's old bed, sniffed it, then laid down as if it had always been his. Claire froze, her breath hitched in her throat, and then, quietly, she sat beside him on the floor, resting her hand on his back. "I wasn't ready," she said softly, "but maybe you are." Outside, the wind rustled the trees gently, and for the first time in a long while, the silence of Claire's home didn't feel empty. Could Milo become more than just a rescue? Could he help Claire heal the scars she thought would never fade? Morning sunlight poured through the living room window, dancing across the hardwood floor where Milo lay curled up in Jasper's old bed. The cream-colored French bulldog was sleeping peacefully for the first time in what seemed like ages. His breathing was steady. His body no longer trembled. And Claire, sitting on the couch with a mug of coffee in hand, watched him like someone afraid to blink, scared it might all disappear. But peace was fragile. The phone rang. Claire hesitated before picking it up. Claire Bennett speaking. It was Rachel, her coworker at the clinic. Hey, I just wanted to let you know that someone from animal control stopped by this morning. Claire sat upright. About Milo? Yeah. Apparently the guy, Earl, filed a complaint. Said you stole his working dog. Claims he had papers. Claims he's pressing charges. Claire's jaw clenched. There were no papers. He tied that dog to a cart and left him to suffer. I have photos, injuries, vet reports. I know. We've got your back, Rachel said. But you might want to be careful for a while. After hanging up, Claire looked at Milo, who had just stirred and raised his sleepy head. His eyes blinked slowly, unaware of the storm beginning to swirl outside the quiet walls of her home. She sighed. They're not taking you back. I promise. Later that afternoon, Claire took Milo for a walk through the woods behind her house. A short, gentle path lined with golden leaves. Milo was hesitant at first. The harness made him pause, but Claire had spent days getting him used to it without any pulling. This time it was freedom, not labor. He sniffed pine needles, dug at a patch of soft earth, and even chased a leaf in lazy circles. Claire laughed, a genuine sound she hadn't made in far too long. For a brief moment she forgot about complaints and threats. All she could see was a dog rediscovering joy. But just as they reached the clearing, a loud voice echoed from the direction of the road. Claire! She turned sharply. Earl was standing at the edge of the property line, arms crossed, a smug smirk beneath his stained cap. That's my dog, he barked. Claire stepped between him and Milo. No, he's not. Not anymore. You think you can just take what's mine? I've got people who'll back me up. Milo, sensing the tension, crept behind Claire's leg, his small body tense. Claire didn't shout. She didn't flinch. She pulled out her phone, already recording. Say that again, she said calmly. While I'm filming. Earl's smirk faded. He muttered something under his breath and turned back toward his truck. As he drove away, dust swirling behind his tires, Claire crouched beside Milo and whispered, We fight. Together. The moment cemented something between them, an invisible bond made stronger not by the good moments, but by the bad ones they'd survived. But with legal threats looming and Milo's full past still unclear, could they truly move forward? Or would the weight of yesterday catch up to them both? The next morning, Claire stood by the kitchen table, sorting through a manila envelope she had pulled from her filing cabinet. Inside were photographs of Milo's injuries, medical records, and the vet's signed statement describing his physical condition at the time of rescue. She had been preparing for this, not because she expected to fight, but because she refused to lose. Milo sat quietly nearby, his round eyes following her every movement. He wasn't the same dog she had found weeks ago tied to that cart. His coat was shinier. His steps were steadier. His eyes, though still a little cautious, now held something new. Safety. But just as Claire reached for her phone to call her lawyer, it buzzed in her hand. A known number. She hesitated, then answered. Claire Bennett. Ms. Bennett, this is Officer Reeves from the county shelter. I wanted to speak with you regarding a dog named Milo, a French bulldog. Claire straightened. Yes. We've been reviewing the case. There's something you should know. Milo was actually brought into our shelter 6 months ago. Microchipped, no tags. He was adopted out to a man named Earl Goodwin, who presented false credentials during the process. It seems he lied about being a licensed handler. Claire felt her pulse quicken. You're telling me he was never legally certified to own a working dog? Correct. And he broke the adoption agreement by using the dog for labor. We're revoking his rights and closing the case. Claire looked down at Milo, who had trotted over to sit at her feet. She swallowed the tightness in her throat. So what happens now? There was a pause. Then the officer's voice softened. If you're willing, Ms. Bennett, the shelter would like to offer you full custody. Claire didn't cry. Not then. She simply said, Thank you. I'd be honored. Later that afternoon, she knelt beside Milo in the yard. You're home, she whispered, running her fingers behind his ears. For real this time. But the moment of peace didn't last long. That evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Claire received a message from someone unexpected. A woman named Lily, who claimed to be Milo's original owner. Her message was simple. I saw your post about Milo. He disappeared from our home last year. Please, can we talk? Claire's heart skipped. She looked at Milo, sleeping soundly by the fireplace. Could it be true? Had Milo's story started long before Earl ever got involved? If so, what would it mean for the bond they had already built? Claire stared at the message glowing on her phone screen. The woman's name, Lily Harper, meant nothing to her, but the words carried weight. He disappeared from our home last year. Milo had been through so much. He was no longer the terrified, trembling dog Claire had rescued from under the cart. He was learning to trust, to love, to live again. But if Lily's story was real, if she truly was Milo's original owner, what would that mean for them? Still, Claire knew she couldn't ignore the message. She replied, Hi Lily, can you tell me more about how Milo came into your life and how he disappeared? The response came quickly. We adopted him as a puppy. His name was Max back then. We lived on a small ranch outside Nashville. One night, he got out through a broken fence. We searched everywhere, filed reports. I never gave up. Then I saw your video. Claire's breath caught in her chest. The post. It had been a short clip she'd uploaded to a rescue group's page. Milo pulling leaves in the woods with a joyful grin. The caption reading, Healing happens slowly, but look at him now. She looked across the room at Milo, curled up in his usual spot by the fireplace. He had found comfort here, safety. And now, maybe, the truth had come looking for him. The next day, Claire met Lily in a public park halfway between their towns. She arrived early, unsure of what to expect. When Lily finally appeared, Claire's breath caught again. She was in her mid-30s, dressed simply in jeans and a plaid flannel. Her eyes were soft but tired, like someone who had waited far too long for something she never thought she'd see again. Claire opened Milo's carrier slowly. The little French bulldog stepped out, his tail wagging cautiously as his paws hit the grass. Lily knelt down. Max? She said gently. At first, Milo tilted his head. Then he froze. A moment passed. 2. Then his ears perked, his body straightened, and in a flash, he rushed forward and buried his face in Lily's lap, whining softly, tail wagging wildly. Claire turned away, tears stinging her eyes. She had expected this, prepared for it, but the reality was harder than she'd thought. Lily looked up at her. Thank you, she whispered. You saved him. You brought him back. Claire forced a smile. He saved me too. They talked for an hour, sharing everything they knew about Milo, his trauma, his progress, his strange strength. But as they stood to leave, Lily said something that stopped Claire cold. I want you to keep him. Claire blinked. What? Lily smiled, tears brimming. He's safe with you. You gave him something I couldn't. Healing. I lost him once, and I swore if he ever came back, I'd do what's best for him. And what's best is you. Claire fell silent, overwhelmed. Milo trotted back to her side, sitting at her feet like he always did. The moment didn't need more words, said everything. But the road wasn't over, because even with answers and ownership, there was still one more chapter ahead. Would Milo finally be free to live a peaceful life, or would fate test their bond one last time? Weeks passed since Milo's emotional reunion with Lily, and though the encounter had brought closure, it also carved a permanent space in Claire's heart. A reminder that love sometimes means letting go, even if you're lucky enough not to have to. Milo remained with her, but he was different now, lighter in spirit and movement. The haunted look that once clouded his eyes had been replaced with a soft calm. At night, he'd curl beside Claire on the couch, snoring softly into her side, and she no longer woke to whimpers or startled growls. The nightmares had stopped. The healing had taken root. Claire had quietly filed the final adoption paperwork 2 days after meeting Lily. It was official now. Milo wasn't going anywhere. Still, there were moments when the past echoed. One crisp Sunday morning, Claire took Milo to a local farmer's market. Stalls buzzed with activity. Children ran through rows of pumpkins, couples sampled apple cider, and dogs tugged at leashes, sniffing everything. It was the kind of place Milo would have once cowered in. But today, he walked confidently beside Claire, wearing a harness embroidered with his name and a small tag that simply read, "Loved." A woman in her 60s stopped them by the baked goods tent. "Oh, what a beautiful little French bulldog. What's his story?" Claire knelt beside Milo, smiling as he leaned into her hand. "He pulled a cart full of rocks before he ever learned to play with a toy." The woman blinked. "You're joking." "I wish I was," Claire said softly. "But now he spends his days on pillows, not pavement." That night, Claire sat by the fire again, Milo curled up beside her as usual. She looked at the fading bruise marks that still dotted his sides, memories etched into fur, and felt both pain and pride. Milo had been through something most humans wouldn't survive. And yet here he was. He stirred in his sleep and nudged closer. Claire ran her fingers along his spine, whispering, "You're not just a survivor, Milo. You're a warrior." Then her phone buzzed. It was a message from Lily. Just a photo. It showed a wooden sign newly hung on her fence. It read, "The Max Foundation, for dogs who've carried too much." Below it, in smaller print, "Inspired by a French bulldog who taught us all how to keep going." Claire smiled through tears. Milo stretched and yawned beside her, then rested his head in her lap. He was home. Finally. Forever. If this story inspired you, remember, even the smallest hearts can carry the heaviest burdens and still come out stronger. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this video with someone who needs a little courage today.